Do you ever wonder why you're not winning more at 1-2 or 1-3 live poker? Well, these 4 mistakes might be the exact reason. Not only do they hold you back, but they will also make you miserable. As a live low-stakes professional poker player, I see these mistakes all the time. And let me tell you a secret, I still sometimes make them. But if you manage to improve in these 4 areas, your win rate will shoot up. In this video, I'm going to tell you what these 4 mistakes are, how you can spot and fix them, and how you can develop the mindset to eliminate them from your game. Especially the last mistake is extremely common among non-professional poker players, so pay close attention to it. But let's start with a mistake that I can almost guarantee that you make. How do I know that? Because everyone makes it, even professional players. Here's an example. You play in a live 1-2 game with a 10% rake capped at $6 plus another $1 for promotions per hand. You are in the big blind and you have King 10 offsuit. An unknown player in early position raises to $10. This is a totally standard raise size in these games, but it is not exactly GTO approved. But that's not the problem here. If you have watched some of my videos before, you will know that I don't mind opening bigger at live low stakes as long as you have an edge over your opponents. The issue is Hero's reaction here. Everyone else folds and Hero decides to flick in the call. Now let's look at the simple maths here. We have to pay $8 to win Villain's $10 plus the $1 from the small blind and the $2 for the big blind. So that's $13. However, we said that there is a 10% rake plus another $1 for promotions. This means that $3 will be taken out of the pot. So now we're paying $8 to win $10. So we need to be good 44% of the time. But we are out of position, so we will probably not be able to realize all our equity. And what's even worse, against a typical raising range from under the gun, our King 10 offsuit isn't looking great. We only have 36% equity, and we are dominated by hands like Ace-King, King-Queen, King-Jack, and Ace-10. This call here is a losing call against everyone except for maybe the very weakest players. It would be different if he had raised to $5 as GTO recommends. You would only have to pay $3 to win $6. This would still not be super profitable, but you now only need 33% equity, which is much better than the 44% in the example with a $10 raise. So mistake number 1 that holds you back is you are not price sensitive when you call pre-flop raises. The fix for this one is simple, but it means that you will need to play a more boring style. You have to play tighter and call a lot less. And I really mean a lot less than you probably do at the moment. The second one is a cousin to the first mistake, but this one is even more costly. Let's look at another hand. This time, a passive recreational player opens to only $7, so you call with pocket 9s in the big blind. The flop comes 10-6 deuce rainbow, he bets half pot, you call. The turn is another deuce, he bets half pot again, you call again. The river is a queen. He bets another half pot, so you're getting 3-1 here, which are fairly attractive odds. We only have to be good 25% of the time to break even. Well, the problem is that we're up against a passive recreational player who raised pre-flop, bet the flop, bet the turn, and bet the river. Admittedly, he didn't go huge on any street, but so much aggression and initiative are usually indicative of a fairly strong hand. But all we have is a bluff catcher. So unless he does this with an absolute airball, we have no chance of winning this pot. But many live low-stakes players will call here and will get shown a hand like aces or kings. So the second mistake that holds back low-stakes players is Hero calling too often on the river. The fix for this one: be very selective with river calls in live low-stakes poker against passive opponents. I definitely overfold in this spot, and I think this is the right adjustment. If you want to know how to bluff catch correctly, watch my video on the topic. I will leave a link in the description below. The third mistake is an interesting one because it is the result of a panic that overcomes many players when they are in a hand, like in this hand that I witnessed as a 1-2 game at the Empire in London. Villain raises in the hijack and hero 3-bets queen 10 of diamonds on the button, which is a good play. Villain calls. Flop comes king queen 4 with 2 diamonds, so we have second pair and a flush draw. In GTO territory, this is a range bet and you bet mainly small, including with this exact hand. That said, exploitatively, I might just check back because I have second pair and a draw to a nutted hand. But what did hero do here? He bet almost pot. Villain calls. The turn is an offsuit 7, villain checks. After that big bet on the flop, hero now absolutely has to check. If we bet again, especially if we bet big again, there is almost no chance that we will get called by a weaker hand. Even the nut flush draw doesn't get the right odds to call. But what does hero do? He bets close to pot once again. If the big flop bet was a fairly big mistake, this turn bet is a disaster. The only hands that hero should bet big in this spot are really strong hands or bluffs. But queen 10 is as marginal a hand as you could imagine. Hero should check and take his equity rather than blasting. We call this a polarization mistake. And in plain English, this means that hero is overplaying marginal hands. So how can we avoid that? It's very simple. Every time you bet, you should consider why you're betting. There are 3 reasons for betting. 1, to get a weaker hand to call, also called a value bet. 2, to get a better hand to fold, also called a bluff. And 3, to fold out a hand that has equity against yours, although you are currently ahead. If neither of these 3 reasons is met, then don't bet. Or maybe bet small, but definitely don't bet big. Okay, let's move to number 4, and this is a big one. I recently published a community post about a list of mistakes at live low-stakes poker, and someone commented that this is the reason for all the others. And I fully agree. To illustrate what I mean, let me tell you the famous story of Icarus and his father Daedalus, who were imprisoned in a labyrinth. To escape, Daedalus crafted 2 pairs of wings made of feathers and wax. Before they took flight, Daedalus warned Icarus not to fly too close to the sun. If he flew too high, the sun's heat would melt the wax and he would crash. But Icarus had other plans. Overcome with the exhilaration of flying, he ignored his father's warnings. He believed that he could fly as high as he wanted, feeling invincible. Driven by this sense of entitlement, he flew higher and higher, closer to the sun. As he flew too close to the sun, the wax in his wings melted, causing him to fall into the sea and drown. What does this have to do with poker? A lot. I see this sort of behavior at the poker table all the time, and it comes in 2 forms. Either players will literally act the same as Icarus, they ignore good advice because they think they know better and then they fail. Well, speaking of fail, my light just failed. Hold on. Okay, we're back now. So, they ignore good advice because they think they know better and then they fail. An example for this is when I tell a student to play tight and then the student calls an early position raise on the button with 7-4 suited because, well, I don't even know why, but he just does it. And then there is the second form of entitlement, and this one is even more prevalent. Say you open pocket aces and you get called by the big blind. The flop comes jack 6 deuce, you c-bet, he calls. The turn is another deuce, you bet big now, he calls again. The river is a queen, you both check. Villain shows down ace deuce suited and wins the pot. So many low-stakes players will be fuming in this situation. Their aces were a massive favorite pre-flop, their equity was almost 88%. They feel entitled to win this pot. They don't want to accept that 88% is not 100%. I've seen players punt off their entire stack after such a hand. So the fourth and most important mistake that holds live low-stakes players back is being too entitled. How can you eliminate this lead? Accept that variance is a big part of the game and develop a new mindset. Rather than seeing that in this one case you lost a big pot, just know that on paper you still made money. Villain put money into the pot when he was drawing almost dead, yet he somehow got lucky. In this video here, I show you 5 tips on how I deal with mental game issues like this one.